Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 17th, 2025 Haverford Township Board of Commissioners Preliminary Budget Meeting. We'll begin this evening with a roll call. Township Manager Dave Berman, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Gondek.
Present.
Commissioner Forstigroth is absent. Commissioner Cavender.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes.
Here.
Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner McCollum.
Here.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Here. Thank you. Now ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Sergeant T.J. Long.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the Citizens Forum. This is a portion of our meeting during which we invite members of the public to share their remarks on matters on the agenda this evening, which tonight is limited to our preliminary budget approval and trash fee. So at this time, are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Yes, Ms. Alvery. When you come forward, please state your name and...
Michelle Alveray, 134 Hastings Avenue. I've been saying this for years. I feel like a broken record. Back when I was on the Trash and Recycling Committee back in the Quattrani building, I really wish we could look at having a per container fee for our trash pickup. We have a lot of senior citizens in this township, and they don't develop nearly as much trash as families of 2, 3, 4 or more do. And it would be far more equitable if they didn't have to pay the same price as people who put out 3 and 4 cans of trash twice a week. So once again, I'm just asking us to look into this as a more equitable way to charge for trash and recycling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alvery. Any further comments from the audience? Okay, hearing none. I'll open the floor up to my colleagues to see if anyone would like to respond to that at this time. Okay, thank you so much for your remarks. So hearing none, we'll move on to the matters of the agenda this evening, beginning with the agenda item number 3, budget hearing and preliminary adoption of the 2026 budget. I'll now entertain a motion.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
I move that we adopt as an ordinance a preliminary general fund, sewer fund, capital projects fund, and American Rescue Plan Act fund budget, including all taxes, fees, service charges, and other revenue sources provided within all funds for 2026.
Thank you. I've heard a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Heard a motion and a second. The motion's now open for discussion.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
any of us discuss this? I offer up the presentation of the preliminary budget by our township manager, David Berman, who has a PowerPoint to go through, as well as an explanation of the major drivers in our budget. And I welcome him.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Holmes. Before I get started, I made a promise. I'd like to congratulate my daughter, Gabby, who at this very hour is being inducted into the National Junior Honor Society at Springton Lake Middle School. It was a promise. I had to do it.
That's awesome.
I do want to begin with heartfelt appreciation for our residents, volunteers, and the Board of Commissioners, and the entire township staff who work tirelessly year-round to make Haverford Township a strong and responsive and welcoming community. As you know, my name is Dave Berman. I'm the Township Manager here in Haverford Township, and tonight's presentation is about more than just numbers. It's about how we, as a community, invest in the safety, well-being, and quality of life of 50,000 residents, and how we do so in a fiscally responsible and sustainable way. So I want you to walk away tonight with a basic understanding of fund accounting and the different funds the township uses, a clear summary of what's in the 2026 budget, a sense of confidence that the township is planning carefully, living within its means, and still investing in the services and infrastructure that make Haverford Township such a great place to live. This is about transparency, trust, and a responsible plan for 2026 and beyond. So before we get into the numbers, I think it's important to explain how the township budget is created, because it truly is a team effort. Each August, we begin months of collaborative work. Department heads, advisory boards, individual commissioners, Volunteer fire companies, they all prepared detailed submissions outlining their needs for the coming year. Everything from police and emergency services to park maintenance, technology, and community programs. From there, our finance director and assistant township manager, Amy Cuthbertson, leads us through a detailed review and analysis process. Amy makes this budget happen. Management works closely with the departments to ensure that requests align with community goals, contractual obligations, and long-term financial stability. Throughout the process, we receive ongoing guidance from individual commissioners, and in particular from the Finance Committee and its chairman, Commissioner Holmes, whose guidance helps shape the final recommendations that reach the full board. Following this presentation tonight, the board will adopt the preliminary budget with any amendments they feel are necessary. The preliminary budget and a copy of this presentation will be published on the township's website, likely at some point tomorrow. In addition, a hard copy will be available here at the Township Building for public inspection. During the board's regular meeting on December 8th, the board will consider adoption of a final budget with any amendments the board deems advisable. This process ensures the final budget is not only balanced, but also reflective of the priorities of the entire Board of Commissioners. So local governments like Haverford Township use a fund accounting system to ensure money is used only for its intended purpose. Each fund is essentially a separate checkbook with its own revenues, expenses, and rules. And here in Haverford Township, there are 4 funds included in the budget. The $57.7 million proposed general fund budget accounts for all township operations other than sanitary sewer. The $5.6 million sewer fund is an enterprise fund, meaning it operates like a utility. It helps keep the township compliant with environmental regulations and supports long-term sewer infrastructure repairs and maintenance. The American Rescue Plan Act Fund is a temporary fund with approximately $4.3 million remaining to be expended on projects to which the township has already committed. These funds must be expended by December 31st, 2026. The $14.1 million Capital Projects Fund accounts for major long-term investments in things like road paving, park improvements, building renovations, and large vehicles and equipment. So our total proposed budget for 2026 is a whopping $81.7 million. The general fund is the township's primary operating fund. It supports daily life in Haverford Township: police protection, public works, trash and recycling, parks, recreation, the library, and all of the administrative functions that keep things running. It accounts for all financial resources of the general government, except those required to be accounted for in another fund. The 2026 budget continues full delivery of all core services with no new positions added. Here's a breakdown of the general fund for 2026. General government, $2.8 million, includes finance, administration, and management, tax collection, human resources, information technology. The auxiliary line includes library, tree giveaways, environmental projects, Haverford Township Day costs, and interfund transfers. Public safety, $26.9 million, includes police, fire protection, paramedics, emergency management, code enforcement, and planning. Parks and recreation, $6 million, includes the CREC, 34 parks, 17 miles of trails, the Skadium, parks maintenance, and our extensive array of programming. Debt service is the current year's principal and interest payment for the township's long-term debt. Public Works, $13.6 million, includes highway, sanitation, shade tree maintenance, streetlights, traffic signals, pavement marking, signage, all of the things associated with Public Works except sanitary sewer service. So when you compare the 2026 general fund to 2025, you'll notice the total spending increases by about $2.9 million, or roughly 5%. But that number doesn't tell the full story. Every year, there will be a number of one-time or timing-related items built into the total. These include things like transfers to the capital fund for road resurfacing and other infrastructure projects, an extra contribution to bolster the pension plans, and the timing of prior year purchases that happen to fall in the current year. When you remove those items, for the sake of comparison, you get a much clearer picture of our day-to-day operations, and that increase year over year is about 3%. That 3% growth reflects the natural cost of doing business. It includes ongoing operating costs like contractual wage adjustments, benefits, utilities, and insurance, not new spending programs. So while the overall general fund budget appears to grow by 5%, the township's core operating spending remains stable and sustainable, keeping services strong without expanding the size of government. So there are lots of cost drivers in the general fund, and we just can't ignore them. We continue to manage costs carefully, but inflationary pressures remain real. We have contractual wage increases. We have health insurance up nearly 12% over the last 2 years. We have solid waste disposal up 9% over the last 2 years. And this year we have utility costs rising over 5%. These are essential investments in safety, quality of life, and the services our residents expect. So as we look at the costs associated with our solid waste program, it's important to begin with a reminder of just how comprehensive our township services really are. Haverford Township continues to provide one of the region's most robust waste management programs: twice weekly trash collection, weekly recycling and brush pickup, glass diversion, curbside leaf collection, semi-annual e-waste and shredding events, and our textile recycling partnership with Helpsy. We continue to add services intended to divert materials from the landfill to improve both the environment and our bottom line. So the township continues to deliver this incredibly high level of service, especially when you compare us to neighboring Delaware County municipalities. Our goal is to maintain the robust waste program that our residents value while being transparent about the rising costs that influence the overall budget. By understanding both the level of service we provide and the cost drivers behind it, we can make thoughtful decisions that balance quality, sustainability, and fiscal responsibility. So I mentioned township debt earlier. We maintain about $53.3 million in outstanding debt. It's well within best practices in terms of borrowing levels, and we compare favorably to other AAA municipalities. Oh, did I mention we're a AAA municipality? We have the highest credit rating available from Moody's. And by the way, right now about 9% of our general fund goes toward debt service, which again is well within the best practices range, which recommends keeping debt service below about 10 to 15% so the community can maintain flexibility. So altogether, this shows that the township is using debt conservatively and managing its long-term obligations in line with best practices. So I'll take a minute to talk about pensions because they represent another important long-term obligation for the township. First, our police defined benefit pension plan. It provides a guaranteed benefit based on salary and years of service, and that benefit is guaranteed for the lifetime of our officers. The plan is funded through a combination of employee contributions, annual township contributions, and state aid. Each year, we are required to contribute an amount called the minimum municipal obligation, or MMO. The MMO is calculated by our actuary and reflects the cost of benefits earned that year, plus adjustments based on the market value of the pension fund. When investment markets go up, the MMO tends to go down. The township's required when markets underperform, the township's required contribution rises. So this is why pension funding can fluctuate from year to year. We also maintain a civilian defined benefit pension plan. It works the same way. Market volatility affects this MMO. Again, strong returns lower the required contribution, and down markets will result in an increased contribution. Now, about 15 years ago, the township, in collaboration with our municipal employees collective bargaining unit, made a significant structural change. We closed the civilian defined benefit plan to new employees and created a defined contribution plan in its place. This change, very similar to a 401k structure, reduces long-term financial risk and cost to the township because contributions are fixed and predictable. not tied to market performance or lifetime benefit guarantees. At the same time, it remains a strong competitive benefit for employees because the township makes a direct employer contribution into each employee's retirement account, helping them build a flexible nest egg for the future. Overall, these changes help maintain pension sustainability while continuing to offer meaningful retirement benefits to our workforce. Here's a summary of our general fund revenues. We have departmental earnings of $9.3 million, including zoning, building, recreation programs, trash fees, parking meters, some revenues from Haverford Township Day, police details, and so on. We have grants and gifts of $3.6 million. The large revenue sources in that category include state pension aid, volunteer fire relief funding, liquid fuels funding, otherwise known as state highway aid. We have interfund transfers of $4.4 million, largely the use of fund balance. We have licenses and permits, $2.5 million. That includes cable TV franchise fees, which, by the way, they're declining because people are going more with streaming rather than cable television. We have building and zoning permits, inspections, use and occupancy certificates, and things of that nature. Local enabling taxes of $5.5 million includes our mercantile taxes and business privilege tax, the real estate transfer tax, and our local services tax. We have other income, interest income and rents. That includes some cell tower revenue and interest revenue. And we have real estate taxes, our largest source of revenue at $29.5 million. So I think it's worth examining the financial model for Haverford Township. First, our revenue reality. We know that property taxes provide the single largest source of revenue in our general fund. We also know that Haverford Township is pretty much a built-out community, meaning our total assessed value is not going to change much from year to year. As a result, this major revenue source has a natural tendency to stay almost completely flat over time. Now, with flat revenues and a modest 3% cost increase each year, we have a structural gap. Over time, that gap has to be addressed through efficiency, use of reserves, deferring capital projects, creating new revenue sources, or adjusting the tax rate. It's usually some combination of all of these things. But the core point is simple. Our main revenue source is flat, and our costs are not. So it's not a sign of mismanagement. It's simply the math of local government finance. In the absence of a tax increase, this is the reality. That's the structural challenge we're navigating. So for 2026, we're proposing a 3.3% township real estate tax increase and a $12 increase in the annual trash and recycling fee. These changes are focused, they're minimal, and they're strategic, just enough to keep pace with rising essential costs. In addition, we propose a strategic drawdown of fund balance, which I'll discuss shortly. So how does a 3% tax increase affect your tax bill? For the average residential assessment of $346,000, the tax impact is $51 per year. For the median residential assessment, the tax impact would be $46 per year. This supports police, public works, trash and recycling, parks, recreation, all the things that make this township such a great place to live. So where do your tax dollars go? Here in Haverford Township, we have three primary separate taxing authorities for property taxes: the township, the school district, and the county. Each one is independent. Each sets its own budget, and each sets its own tax rate. The school district receives a lion's share of every property tax dollar, typically around 2/3 of the total. The township and county receive much smaller portions. So while we all pay property taxes, it's important to note that this evening we're only talking about the township portion, which is about 16% of your overall tax bill. Now, over the past several years, the cost of almost everything has gone up about 25% overall. During that same time, Haverford Township's property tax rate went up only about 14%, even with the proposed increase for 2026. And that means the township consistently finds other ways to keep up with the cost of doing business. We absorbed higher costs for salaries, equipment, materials, insurance. We tightened our operations. We find efficiencies, and we carefully use reserves when needed. So in plain language, inflation rose a lot faster than our tax rate, and it's a testament to our township employees who work very hard to maintain services and help us avoid passing the full impact of rising costs on to our residents. So let's talk about the use of general fund reserves. It's important to remember that these funds are designed to help the township manage uncertainty and maintain stability. Reserves are most appropriate when we need to respond to a crisis or emergency, such as a major storm event or an unexpected operational disruption. They're also used when short-term revenue shortfalls occur, a situation where revenues come in lower than expected and we need to maintain services without sudden cuts. Reserves can also be an important tool to help stabilize tax increases, allowing us to smooth year-to-year impacts on residents rather than passing along sharp adjustments all at once. And it's important to note that maintaining a healthy reserve position, as indicated on the chart, is a major factor in our AAA credit rating. That credit rating saves taxpayers money by lowering borrowing costs, and it reflects the township's strong, disciplined financial management. So even with the proposed use of general funds in 2026, Haverford Township's general fund reserves remain strong by any standard. So again, reserves are crucial to our financial strength. The proposed budget includes the use of $2.6 million of reserves in a targeted and limited manner to support operations and pension stability without compromising future financial security. This approach allows the township to meet immediate needs while preserving long-term stability. I had to do that. So the sewer fund is used to account for the ongoing operation, maintenance, and repair of our sanitary sewer system, and for the costs of downstream conveyance and treatment. The sewer system is not funded by property tax. It's funded entirely through user fees. So the majority of our sewer fund costs, about 68%, are payments we make to third parties. The Radnor Haverford Marple Sewer Authority and Upper Darby Township for conveyance and treatment of our sanitary sewage. Since Haverford Township does not operate its own treatment plant, we rely on these regional systems just like many municipalities in the area. Their charges are based on the amount of flow coming from our community. Because of that, this big portion of our sewer budget is something we must pay and is largely outside of our short-term direct control. So we're proposing no change to the sewer rates this year. The rate is $5.15 per 1,000 gallons of water used. We do have concerns with aging infrastructure. We have concerns with the inflow and infiltration of clear water into our sewer system, which presents significant challenge in terms of potentially overloaded systems, overloaded treatment plants, decreased capacity, and this all can lead to sewage overflows that cause environmental damage and pose public health risks. Additionally, I&I results in increased operational and maintenance costs because we have to treat that clear water. So every year, we include routine cleaning and maintenance of sewer lines and rehabilitation and relining of our sewer system as needed. Even with all these challenges, it's important to note that Haverford Township sewer rates remain among the lowest of our nearby Delaware County neighboring municipalities. So, sewer fund reserves. Let me start by saying that there's no planned use of sewer fund reserves in the proposed 2026 budget. Just like the general fund, sewer reserves are there for emergencies. They're there for stability. They're there to smooth out future rate adjustments. They, most importantly, help us protect our risk of public health emergency if there's a catastrophic sewer failure or something like that happens. These problems, if you have some of these infrastructure issues, they could be quite expensive. So we maintain enough reserves to cover those types of emergencies. And that's all I have to say about that. Let's move on to the Capital Projects Fund. The Capital Projects Fund accounts for financial resources used to acquire or construct major capital projects. The revenue in this fund comes from the sale of bonds, notes, grants, and capital appropriations from the general fund. We hold these monies separate from any other funds. Now, the timing of capital projects varies, and therefore the spending in this fund will ebb and flow depending on the activity each year. For 2026, the proposed budget includes a range of important capital projects that will result in improvements to roads and facilities, storm and sanitary sewer systems, historic properties owned by the township, parks and trails, as well as the anticipated delivery of fire apparatus that we ordered a couple of years ago now. These are projects residents will see and feel, improving mobility, safety, recreation, sustainability, and overall quality of life, with no new debt in 2026. So again, this evening the board will adopt the preliminary budget with any amendments the board feels are necessary. The preliminary budget and a copy of this presentation will be published on the township's website. In addition, a hard copy will be available for public inspection here at the township building. During the board's meeting on December 8th, the board will consider adoption of a final budget with such amendments that the board deems advisable. Haverford Township is a community that takes pride in doing things the right way. We take care of each other, we invest in our future, we plan responsibly so that tomorrow is even brighter than today. This budget protects essential services, strengthens our infrastructure, and keeps our financial foundation strong, all with a very modest impact on our taxpayers. And in closing, I'd like to again express my appreciation to Amy Cuthbertson, who puts this entire package together every year, and also to Commissioner Holmes and the Finance Committee for your guidance during the process. And now, Amy and I, and Commissioner Holmes, would be glad to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Township Manager Berman. We give a round of applause. This time, I'd like to open up the floor to my colleagues for any questions or comments.
Madam President, I just wanted to point out a couple things that are worth noting to our audience. If you notice in debt service, in principal and interest, you will see that we not only have what 2005's actual numbers are, but we also project out 2026, 27, 28, and 29. And what you'll see, if you add those numbers together, is a level debt service over the next 5 years of approximately $5.2 million. That is not a coincidence. That is part of the financings that we do, and one of our requirements that the DCED puts on us is to create level debt service over the years, so you don't have you don't just put off till next Tuesday what we eat today, and so. That is apparent to anybody who looks at it, and I wanted to note that if anybody was curious about that. I also just want to note that within our budget, it's always funny, somewhere toward the back under auxiliary heading, there's just this one little entry called the library subsidy. It is extremely important, an important part of our township. It is an important investment on the part of our township for everybody who lives here. The library subsidy will very, very slowly increase over the next 5 years. By 2029, crossing the $1.5 million mark. Please be aware, 20 years ago when I joined this board, we were giving the library $1 million a year. It is extraordinary what they have done for those 2 decades with the subsidy that we provide. And I just want to note to folks that is this year's subsidy. And frankly, for what we get for it, I think it's pretty economical. I don't have any other particular things I want to point out. I appreciate the effort to address and use different avenues for us to raise the income necessary to bridge the gap. That does include a $12 increase in the tax, in the fees associated with our trash. that I have spoken in the past, and a number of commissioners feel this way, that is something generally, that should be borne township-wide. We think maybe the larger the property, the larger the burden they may put on trash. But the fact is, this keeps it at about 85%, I think, Ms. Cuthbertson? Slightly lower, between 80 and 85% of the actual cost of our trash collection. We try to do through the fee, and the rest is then just absorbed by everybody township-wide. That is considered to be a fair way to distribute those costs, since they are so direct and every single person gets them. Those are the only particular things I wanted to highlight. I do want to commend Ms. Cuthbertson and our township manager, Dave, for their extraordinary work, and all the department heads who worked very hard to make this budget together. I also want to thank my finance committee colleagues. This was a busy year for us. I think our committee met more times than maybe it had met in the past. Certainly, years ago when I was its chair, I tended to be the chair of a one-person committee. But it was a very, very active, intelligent committee with perspectives and experience from all different experiences in the township, and varying levels of experience here in government. And I appreciate my colleagues' effort. It was a long time ago we were told what could happen this year, which was a potential double-digit increase in taxes. And I really appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking that went into keeping this increase to, frankly, below the inflation rate, and something that we hope folks in the township will recognize as necessary to keep delivering the extraordinary services the township delivers. So those are my comments. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes. Further comments or questions?
I'll just, if I may, one, I find it intriguing that we can ask Commissioner Holmes questions directly. I might have to take him up on that. But no, I just wanted to take a second to just, obviously, the proposal here is, I think, 3.3% tax increase, a very small increase to our trash fee. And I don't think, obviously, no one likes tax increases. But I will say that, I want to express my appreciation and my thanks to Mr. Berman, to Ms. Cuthbertson, to Mr. Commissioner Holmes, and my fellow members of the Finance Committee, because, quite honestly, this budget was definitely a feat to behold, in the sense that when they first started looking at the numbers, Mr. Berman and Ms. Cuthbertson started without anything else. Just two things occurred that dropped them in a $2.2 million hole, somewhere around that. Just so people understand, approximately every $100,000 of revenue is a 0.4% tax increase. So when this whole process started, we were looking at, for every $100,000 of revenue is approximately a 0.4% tax increase. So when we started this whole project, we were looking at substantially higher than 3.3%. There was a lot of conversations, there was a lot of belt tightening, and I know that our township staffs put in an worked extraordinarily hard on this, and put in a lot of dedication and effort. And so I do want to applaud them. I know I've been critical of tax increases in the past, but having the numerous meetings that we've gone through on this and looked at every item, they really went through this with a fine-tooth comb, and this is probably the best product you could possibly get from anybody. So I do want to thank you for that. I do have two questions. One, just for public education. Obviously, a big driver of our increased expenses was the MMO contribution increase, which is basically kind of outside of our hands. It's calculated by actuaries based on the performance of the stock market, amongst other things. Amy, is it correct in saying that the hit we took this year, you don't anticipate, based on the way that they do the calculations every 2 years, that dollar amount hit that we took this year is not anticipated to be an additional burden on 2027 on the following year.
The actuarial valuation that we're under right now that dictates a lot of the MMO is governing 26 and 27. So those two budgets, we're going to see the same level of MMO contribution.
But because we've already factored in this year,
Correct.
it's not going to be on top of that next year.
It should be similar to this year's.
So that's what I was just trying
Correct.
to get to, is that we've worked it in this year, so it would by almost default be worked into next
Correct.
year.
Correct.
And then and this is a question for my own edification. Commissioner Holmes indicated, under the one line item about the library subsidy. Does that include their health insurance and those things, or is that separate from that?
No, we do give them funding to pay their share of the MMO because they do participate in our retirement plans. So essentially, we give them an operating contribution, and then we give them a contribution towards that retirement that we will bill them and they pay back to us. So it's sort of a book entry.
And that was what I was kind of getting at, is
Yes.
that the library doesn't just receive open-ended funds with nothing in return, that they actually are responsible for a chunk of their costs. It's just the way the journal entries are done, they're in different sections of the budget. Is that
I
correct?
should clarify, that's just for pension contributions. So what they do get a bill from us, we're in the process of preparing it now. We do it in the beginning of December of each year. We send them a bill for all of their health insurance costs, life insurance costs, long-term disability costs, and that they send us a check directly from that operating monies that we give them. So while the retirement is more of a book entry, the health and employee benefits is a true billing from us to them, with them remitting actual cash to us.
But on our side of the expense, in our bookkeeping, where's that booked?
In Department 440, which is under the, it's not on the library. If you look at the budget, if you have it in front of you, I don't know if you do, but 9007 is the library subsidy, and then underneath that are the various health and life insurance and other employee benefit lines for library employees.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Any further questions or comments from my colleagues?
I have a few questions, and part of it is just, general education on the budget. Thank you so much, Dave. That was really informative. I appreciate all the work that you put into it and that Amy put into it. I really do think the little bit that I knew about the process, I think you did an excellent job of keeping costs under control. My comment may be, I feel like maybe you did almost too much. And I just want to make sure that we are still, if we're increasing the budget by 3.3% and inflation is 3.3%, are we really increasing our services? Are we just staying stable? Like, to me, I want to see us continue to improve the things that we do. And I think there are a lot of things that we do very well and we're going to continue to do very well. And I think there's other areas we could always improve. So my first question is, and I just want to say, like, a lot of this is me just assessing, like, I look at it more in terms of priorities than like accounting. That's not as much my area, but so talk about personnel, and I know you can't go into that much, but are we staying this? I know we're not adding anybody, but how do you feel that is for this year? Did you have to make compromises or?
So looking ahead, we do recognize that there are areas where there will be attrition, and there may be areas where we can achieve some economies. We're still looking at that. I will say that just what we've walked into here is a very lean organization. I think it's pretty clear that we have a limited number of people who work here, and they do a really incredible amount of work. And that's across the board. But particularly, I'm really impressed with Public Works. We have 120 miles of roads. And even parks maintenance, we have 34 parks. We have 17 miles of trails. I mean, I can't tell you how many trees that we have to look at every year to, to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. And so what I will say is we have adequate staffing to do things the way we've been doing them.
Right. And we do not have an arborist on staff. Is
That's
that
correct.
right?
We do not have an arborist
We
on
have a
staff.
part-time person to do all the trees in the township.
We don't pay an arborist on staff. If there's something critical that needs to be looked at in a park, we'll do what we can without an arborist, and then if we need to call in a specialist, we will.
So my other question is about the strategic reserve fund. Is that, no, you talked about our Moody's rating, which is really good. How big, and I'm sorry if I missed it, how big is the strategic reserve fund?
I'm going to let Finance Director Cuthbertson talk to that.
The way we measure it in our industry is by percentage of revenues. So that's really how a municipality is weighed against another or evaluated by Moody's as to financial health. So right now we are projecting to end 2026, even with the drawdown, at about 65% of budgeted revenues. So that, if you look at us compared to other AAA rated communities, that is right on par with where we are with our other fellow AAA rated communities.
And so by taking out the 2.6 million, does that impact our rating at all to have less in our
It should
strategic
not. It
fund?
would bring it down, and we feel this is a wise drawdown, that we are using this money to enhance our pension, to increase not only this year's contribution, but to put an extra 1.5 million into it, just to stabilize it for the future, as some of our commissioners have already mentioned. That MMO we're seeing creep up, and we're seeing it continue to creep up. People are living longer. Retirees are pension plans were not set up for retirees to live 40 years. They just weren't way back when. But that's what's great about today and today's health is people are living that long, but we have to fund that long. So we think using the reserves for this purpose is a good use of reserves. So even with the use, we are still in a very healthy range and still right on par with our fellow AAA rated communities. So I don't think the use of those funds would be any alarm for Moody's to consider any kind of downgrade.
So the pension, though, and the health insurance increases, those are going to continue. So how do we think we will accommodate those, in years, in the future years? Because we're going to continue to have that cost and it may even increase.
I think a lot of that will depend on future conversations with both of our collective bargaining units. That's part of the equation. Part of it is just remaining competitive and pricing out things as opposed to just continuing with the same. There's different brokers that have different plans, have the same plans, but just under different brokers. So I think it's us being aware of costs and being open to a little bit of change. But a lot of it's going to depend on conversations with our collective bargaining units in the future.
Okay. So I do have a couple more questions. When I look at the capital fund expenditures, why, I fully support this, by the way, I'm just curious, why is the park improvements budget going from 1.58 million to 2.92 million? And then years after that, it goes back down. I'm just curious what the cost is for that.
It really is just depend on timing of projects. So some years there's a lot of projects, some years we're finishing up projects, but did the bulk of it in a prior year. So in this particular one, we don't have a lot identified for 27, 28, and 29 yet. That will probably,
Okay. Oh, I see.
a conversation will come in earnest maybe when that gets a little closer.
Gotcha.
But a lot of that is just timing and ebb and flow of capital projects.
Is the increase because of Brookline, or what? Why is it going from 1.5 to 2.9? I mean, I know probably not, but what is the cost? Sorry, I didn't mean to throw Brookline under the bus at all. I'm just trying to figure it out. Just Polo.
Oh boy, how big of a
Fair
same
enough.
thing she is.
Do you guys want to talk about this in the back? maybe?
I mean, I fully support spending money on our parks and rec. I just know that for playgrounds, you know, we have a limited capital budget this year, and that's the way it has to be. I'm just curious if
Well,
we're
in
doing something.
26, we do have in the plan to finish the final phase of the Darby Creek Trail. So that
Okay.
middle phase that involves the house at Vermont, so that project does have a hefty price tag.
Okay.
And we do have other ambitious projects. Brian could
Yeah,
definitely
Brookline
expand.
is a significant next year, somewhere in the order of almost $500,000. The Darby Creek Trail extension is somewhere in the area of 1.5 to 1.6 million. Now,
Okay. I mean, that
almost
accounts.
all the money that I just mentioned is grant funding, about $5,000 contribution to the Darby Creek Trail through regular or capital funds. The other money that we're talking about for the Darby Creek Trail came from a Delco grant, a DVRPC grant, and a local share grant. And then the money at Brookline that we plan on spending is from the balance of the local share grant. So most of the money that you're referring to is grant monies for
Got it.
6. Only roughly a little over $500,000 is not grant money.
Gotcha.
It's
That makes
listed
sense.
here as spending,
I
but
see.
it doesn't have the, well, at least in this page, doesn't have the corresponding.
Right.
Right.
Okay. That makes more sense. We talked about that a little bit today with the Elwell Field project too. So I understand that. Let's see. What else did I want? One question I have is just about, well, should I ask questions about some of the capital projects offline, like in the few weeks before? I'm just curious what some of the improvements are, like the stormwater project at Bambi and Merlin.
The stormwater at Bambi and
Moreland?
Moreland.
I don't think really intersect, but that's what it
I
says.
think there's storm sewer infrastructure that runs through that neighborhood.
Gotcha.
And I think there's some problems with some sewer pipes
Okay.
in that vicinity.
Yeah, it's more of a repair than,
Yep.
yeah. And so the playground equipment capital budget, is that about the same as it's been in the past? Because we have 34 parks and only
Well,
$100,000.
That's a good question. Prior to 2019, when we started a capital program, there wasn't regular capital investment in parks and or in playground equipment every year. It was more on an ad hoc basis. In 2019, we started a $2.5 million campaign that stretched through like 21. And then in 22, when the ARPA funds became available, that's how we funded the additional park improvements. The PROS plan did outline a cost replacement for the existing infrastructure we had in our parks. It talked a number of somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 a year for courts, for playground equipment, for fencing, backstops, and all those things. Because of everything that Dave outlined and it's been discussed at the beginning of this meeting, we lowered our request for next year because of just the available money.
Right.
But in future years, we would hope that we would get closer to that $300,000 to $400,000
Right.
that we have. Like, we've already identified projects that'll take that money for next year. Some play equipment, some backstop work, some
Right.
other small projects at parks. And then, every time you do an evaluation of your equipment, each year as we do inspections, like we did at Polo, and evaluated certain pieces that were due for replacement. So that's factored in there too.
Okay.
How close did we come to that 3 or to 400,000?
Well, we asked for 100,000 for play equipment, so that's what we asked for.
So that's not very much per park.
No, it's not.
Like 30, is that 30 grand or is it?
No.
No.
Yeah, well, yes, if 30 times 30 would be $1 million roughly. No.
No, so it's
It's about
3,000.
It's
No,
about,
and
it's about
it's not fair to-
3,000 a park.
It's
but the idea-
3,000, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
told
it's-
you, like, math's not my thing,
Yes,
but.
yes. And like it's
But we're
not
not going
every
to spend
park-
$3,000 on a park. We're going to spread. We're going to fix problems and update equipment as we go
Right.
along. So
No,
someplace
I
might
know.
get $75,000, and the next year somebody will get 50.
And the other thing is we're coming off a fairly robust capital program. So we've identified and addressed a lot of needs But ongoing, I think it would need to be more than 100,000.
Yeah.
And just to highlight that point, with the benefit of the ARPA money that we've had over the last couple of years, I think all of our parks have received substantial investment in new equipment that replaced older equipment that had probably been dating back maybe decades, some of it. And correct me if I'm wrong, with regards to the pros plan that was done, I think last year.
It's finished in 24.
Okay.
Beginning of 24.
That also helped create not only the inventory of our equipment, but in essence, the replacement schedule.
Yes.
So it's not that you're just for clarification, it's not that you're just randomly driving around a park and picking something. It's you kind of know, like, all right, I got 5 years to replace this. I got 6 years to replace that.
And that's a process that's been done over the last, once the funds became available, we did a very robust assessment of our equipment to decide what would need to be done. And some things like basketball courts, some have been 15, 20 years since the last time we did those things.
I guess my point is you have accounted for those, and I do understand that, and I think that that's great. That's like 2 projects that come up that you're not expecting, like 2 pieces of playground equipment through 34 parks that if they break over the course of this year, you have money for.
Yes. Correct.
Madam President. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you finished?
No. But go ahead if you want to comment.
Well, I just wanted to comment on this parks issue, and it's forgive me for back in the day stories, but I'm going to tell back in the day stories because there's a few of us in this room who started out back in the day, and Connor came to all those meetings, even though he wasn't old enough to vote yet, but he still. What he knows is we are past now the days of this fake accounting that we did for decades here. And so 0 maintenance for parks, 0 maintenance for the stadium. And with the idea that we were going to have these balanced budgets and low taxes and everyone was going to be happy every November. And then people were going to wonder in May, where are we going to come up with the money for this, for this rusty equipment or for this ice that no longer, that now melts. And so, right now, somebody watching this would say, are they putting enough away every year for playground equipment? It's $100,000. I was reminded by my colleague that in 2019, if we asked for 25, it would have been a big deal. So this really reflects the kind of transparency that we have bragged about and that we have wanted to instill here, and it's happening. It's happening before our very eyes. It does mean a higher budget. And therefore more expenditures. But what we have is far fewer surprises. And we give our people the opportunity to have anticipated these things, so when something is needed, they don't have to come to the board like the library did 8 years ago and said, if we need to open on Sundays, we need this much money. Well, we just don't want to live that tight anymore. And as tight and as lean as our township is now, we still budget practically to be able to deal with potential emergencies and deal with the quite obviously reasonably anticipated expenses of, equipment wearing out and equipment modernizing. I mean, you think of some of the dangerous toys playground equipment we played on in 1977, and you would think you were watching a Wes Craven movie now if you saw kids playing on stuff like that.
There are still a couple of those out there.
Yeah,
we made it through. I'm just saying.
we made it through, but if Brian, you and I made it through, if we're the example of what happens to people who played on stuff like that, I think you might be proving my point.
All right,
actually.
touche.
So, yeah.
Touche.
So that's all the point I wanted to make on that particular item. Just for those folks here who lived through a different era, it's quite refreshing to say that $100,000 a year for the next 4 years is not enough for playground equipment. It may not be, but we're having a conversation that you couldn't have 8 years ago.
Yeah, I welcome the conversation just because it helps me learn more and understand priorities. Like I said, I'm just trying to look at priorities as much as anything. So I do have a few questions I'd like to pursue around some of the staffing and personnel issues. And I would like to ask, I guess if it's Madam President, I don't know, as chair of the personnel committee, could we have a meeting between now and December to talk through some of that? Because I understand it's not, it's confidential and it's in process, and I want to abide by that, but I do have questions about that. And let me say why. I think that it's really important that we increase services for resident-facing positions, because I think it can go a long way when someone has an interaction with the township. And for example, we were able to add some positions in Parks and Rec. People really saw the difference. But I'm not just talking about out on the streets. I think Public Works would be the same, Dave. But our personnel that interfaces with residents on a day-to-day basis from the township building, I think that thinking about that and making even modest improvements or additions, I guess I would say, is noticeable by residents. And I think that, given all the things that Larry was just saying, this is a different way to do things. And to me, I think it would be worth it rather than potentially cutting us down too much and, not offering even a level that is maybe what it is now if we're only increasing the amount of the inflationary rate. I don't know if that was clear, but so that's my concern. I would love to talk that through more with the personnel committee.
Just say, as the chair of the personnel committee, you're entitled to call that committee meeting anytime you'd like. So absolutely.
We'll do that. And I think that's me, Commissioner Holmes, Commissioner McCluskey, and Commissioner Gondek. Okay.
If I may just
Yeah.
kind of chime in on that. One is obviously I'm on the committee. I'd be more than happy to meet at your leisure. I would just simply say that the finance committee, when we met, and when we had conversations with Mr. Berman, Mr. Cuthbertson, obviously one of the things that did come up is personnel and staffing, because upwards of 80% of our operating budget is labor driven. And I would say that, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but I think I feel very comfortable in making the statement that everyone in the finance committee and probably everyone up here would love to have more staff. We would all love to have more people in parks. We would all love to have more people in public works. We would all love to have more in probably every single department there is. But unfortunately, the economics of it is that every additional person you add is, it's a substantial expense, and it's not just an expense for 6 months or 1 year. It's an expense in perpetuity. And so, we have to balance, our desire to have these things with our ability to fund it. I do want to kind of go back and just say, obviously without going into details, we can go into details of the committee, that I think that Dave and Amy really made a very conscientious effort in crafting this budget to ensure that we are able to maintain the level of services that we provide to our residents with this budget, that there's not an anticipation of service drop off, that we are in essence going to be doing more with less. It's a tough situation. And hopefully, in the future, we can come up with some new revenue streams that will allow us to do that. But right now, it's basically a pretty much, you want more people, you got to raise taxes to cover them.
Right.
It's, from a municipal point of view, it's not exactly the greatest, it's not the greatest equation for us, but it's something that we deal with on a year-to-year basis.
I get it. And you have a salary plus benefits, and those are expensive and they increase. I guess I'm curious if I realize I'm making kind of taking an odd position here, but so we have a 3.3% tax increase, and it equals about $50 a household. So if we increase that by a little bit, like how much is that per household? And when you think about services directly benefiting residents, is that worth it? Let's say we went up to 3.4. Is that $55? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of the real true impact on each person. And I'm not in any way, in fact, I applaud the amount that the budget was contained. And I'm just kind of making that case for, are we getting everything we really need?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were looking for something from me. I would say, just off the cuff, if a 0.4% increase is probably an average of $10 more per year. So it would go up to $61 a year, something like that. And that's just off the cuff.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Commissioner Gondak, I appreciate your point, and obviously was part of the conversations with you. There is, in evaluating additional personnel, one of the things you consider is whether that person or that role is a revenue generating role. So, if we increase the stadium staff and because of that, we could increase rental hours for, 2 extra hours a day, then you'd have something that might offset. If you have somebody in personnel whose sole job is to track down, grant revenue, then, that person could be measured by that kind of, revenue that they bring in. So you are right that on several grounds. One, what we went through this year facing the potential budget crisis that we had, and that two, personnel is the most expensive thing that we have. It is fortunately the most productive thing we have. So I would look forward to putting on my other hat on personnel and thinking about and figuring out a way that we could increase the number of township staff in a revenue neutral way, and looking for revenue generating positions, and they may be obvious ones such as people who find grants or people whose services are literally let out for fees, or whether additional work in certain areas increases kind of our indirect revenue. So it's something for personnel to think about and then evaluate with finance and with our finance director. But I appreciate your point, and I think there are ways that we can address that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kavanaugh.
One other thing I would throw out, and because I don't think this is personnel, is would it be possible if we identified some ways that we could improve some resident-facing services, whether that's improving the website, using technology in some way? Is it possible to add, say, maybe it's part-time, maybe it's a consulting project or something that would really kind of enhance some of that, and then think it through maybe for future years if we decide not to invest in a full-time staff?
It seems reasonable to look at things like that, yes.
Okay. Because that might be a way, I do understand the impact that one staff member has on the budget, because it's like a 30% on top of salary just for the benefits, maybe more now. But so I am mindful of that. And thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cavender.
Yeah, can I just, I know this was not what Commissioner Holmes was saying, but just to clarify for the public too, there's tremendous value in the township employees that are not necessarily revenue generating. And I think that comes from our public safety, that comes from our public works, that comes from our parks and rec. I mean, part of what, I have said many times now at this point that there is certain value in the services that are provided and are expected in terms of our property values, in terms of our desirability of places to live. So I just didn't want that to be misconstrued, and I know that's not what you were saying, so I'm just trying to clarify that as well, that we have tremendous township employees, and part of what I think is great about this budget is that it's also recognizing the value that we believe in the employees that we have here, and the services that they do provide for the residents, and it's an appreciation. Like, part of what we want to assure in what we're doing is that we are providing those employees with the pension benefits that they've contractually agreed to, that pension obligation is going to be there for them as they expect it to be, that the health insurance that they have, even with increased costs, is something that's beneficial and worthy for our police, for our public works, for all of our employees. So that's just something I thought. Given a side commentary, I think it's important to note, and I think it was highlighted by Mr. Berman productively, but a lot of the costs that we're facing are the same that everybody's facing. Like there's an increase in health insurance that everyone is seeing, and we're seeing it in terms of how we provide for the employees. We're seeing an increase in utility costs. Everybody's seeing an increase in utility costs. So certain part of these factors in terms of how this budget is created is impacted by the world around us. And that's why, as Commissioner Holmes and Commissioner Gondik both alluded to, this final proposed budget that was produced, certainly for someone who sat on a lot of those finance committee meetings as well, I think is a really excellent result that reflects well upon this board, this township, Ms. Cuthbertson, and Mr. Berman.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
I appreciate very much Commissioner McCluskey's comments, and if that's what he potentially heard, then that means other people heard it as well. And so thank you for reminding everybody the value that our employees bring, revenue or not. And really the perfect example of that for me that I use all the time is the Scadium. And the fact is that our Scadium, that single sheet would not work in the private sector, that nobody's running single sheets. It couldn't be profitable. We couldn't do the work that we did on the ice, on the boards, on the glass, on the new locker rooms. The work we're planning on doing in the next years, we could not do it except for the benefit we have as a government to be able to spread it out over all of Parks and Recs and just recognize it as a government service that also generates revenue, as opposed to being a for-profit ice rink. And that is a very good example of how government can produce these services at a less expensive rate to their, to their users than the private sector can. We do have to answer to shareholders, but they are constituents, and I find they are far less greedy than shareholders are. So so thank you for that, Commissioner McCluskey.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes. Any further questions or comments from my colleagues?
Just another comment about parks. I do think that given the investment we've done with the ARPA funds in the last few years, that the $100,000 makes sense this year. But in future years, I hope we get closer to that $300,000 that it looks like we need to maintain the parks. I think, we've heard from our residents, this is one of the, along with our schools, one of the big attractions of our community, and we want to continue to invest in it and keep them updated. So future budgets, we need to look at that. And, we've come a long way from the, good old days or the bad old days, but let's go a little bit further along here.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. Further questions, comments from my colleagues? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote on the motion before us. Mr. Berman, will you please take the roll?
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavanagh.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner McCullum.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to our next item, ordinance number P17-2025, the trash fee. This is a first reading. I'll entertain a motion. Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
Madam President, I move we adopt the first reading of ordinance number P17 of 2025, fixing the Township of Haverford trash fee at $295 per year.
Second.
I've heard a motion and a second. The motion's now open for discussion. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues on the board?
I think this was addressed during the comments and during the excellent presentation, and I recommend its adoption.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from my colleagues? Hearing none, I'll ask our township manager to please take the roll. Mr. Berman.
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner McCullum.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. I will now ask Commissioner McCluskey to.
I make a motion for ordinance P 18-2025 to adopt the first reading of ordinance P 18-2025, fixing the Township of Haverford sewer fee at $5.15 per 1,000 gallons of water used by property connected to the public sewage system of the township.
Second.
Thank you. I've heard a motion and a second. Just to note, this didn't make it on our original agenda. Our apologies for that. But again, as you know, and as discussed previously, this is keeping the sewer rate at the same rate as it was. That said, are there any further questions or comments from my colleagues regarding this motion?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I'll ask our township manager to please take the roll.
Commissioner Gondik.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavender.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Commissioner McCullum.
Yes.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Yes, motion carries. So that concludes our agenda items for this evening. I'd like to remind the public that our next meeting will be our December work session, scheduled for December 1st at 7 p.m. Before we adjourn, I'd like to invite my colleagues to share any final comments or concerns.
Madam President, I would
Yes.
just say a couple things. One, at our after our work session, at our regularly scheduled session, the budget adoption is the first part of that meeting. And it is at the budget adoption where we will adopt the ordinance of the final general fund. That is where the actual tax increase and final revenues will be set. So tonight we do the trash fee and the sewer fee, but it will be at the December meeting where the final budget is adopted, and that's good on one final reading. And the second thing I wanted to do before we adjourned was just once again to express our appreciation to our professional staff and all the department heads, and frankly, all the staff and members of the Haverford Township community, to thank them for their excellent efforts and for this excellent budget.
Thank you. Any further questions or any further comments?
I'll just throw this one out there very briefly since we're here, and to the extent anyone watches this on the video. First Ward's second and final leaf pickup is next week. So this weekend, please get your leaves out so you don't miss it. Thank you.
Smart. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.